So this is Bunmi. You're welcome to the Clapper Mixing Masterclass. Today we're going to be diving into the art of audio mixing and enhancing your mixing skills and exploring the innovative clapper method. Today we'll be covering the clapper system, and inside the clapper system, all these questions will be answered, which is how to get your loud mixes, how to get clarity in your mix, how to make your mixes to translate on all playback speakers, how to use harmonic distortion to enhance your mix, and how to create a fourth dimension, 3D and four dimension in your depth of field in your mixes. If you don't know me, I'm Bunmi, and my mission is to help music producers worldwide create professional record with ease. And I have been in the music industry for 25 years. I have 2 Grammy nominations. I won a Bagma Award in 2016. And I've been blessed to work with major label artists like Beyonce, Rihanna, Ray J, T-Pain, Sosa Sam. I also had some placement on TV shows, BET, MTV, Oxygen, Star Beats, CBS. And I've sold a bunch of copies on mixing and preset on my website. Also recorded over 3,000 artists worldwide. And these are some affiliations that people I've worked with. That is the proof of my Grammy nomination. And these are some of the Hollywood people I've worked with. This is Layla, Tupac manager, who is now managing Earl Sweatshirt and a bunch of other artists. This is Jason Joshua, Dave Pensado. If you're in the mixing game, you should know all these guys. And this is Ali Saeed, which is a Tribe Called Quest. And this is one of a project I work with that was on Billboard. So the foundation of audio mixing is expected that you understand the basics of audio mixing before we dive into the clapper system, because the clapper system is built on top of the basics of audio system. It's not really for beginner, but if you're a beginner, this is a way to fast track your way to the expert level with the understanding of clapper system. So I'm assuming you guys already know the basics of audio mixing, which is EQing, compression, gain staging, balancing, reverb, delay, and all that good stuff. So why the clapper system? After studying numerous mixing gurus and practicing for years to develop my own style and trying to perfect my taste, I reached a point where I started to document everything I learned and all my practices, because I practice mixing every day for about 2 to 3 years nonstop. And in this period of time, I started collecting and jotting down everything that I love about my mixes. And after documenting all this, I put together some stuff to create the clapper method. And I added all the highlights and all the attributes that I love about all the methods of different gurus that I've learned from. And I put them together to kind of give me a map, what a philosophy and a mindset, a framework, so to speak, to always use as a guideline to get me to the finish line. So the C of the clapper stands for the clarity. With the C, we want to get maximum clarity, because during my studies, I realized the 2 goals that I, as a producer and a mix engineer, try to get to is maximum clarity. And how do we get to maximum clarity? We get to maximum clarity by EQing and by focusing on 3 to 4 elements in the mix and making all these main 4 elements fit together like a puzzle. Because if we don't build on this foundation, we can't get to the L, which is the maximum loudness. So maximum loudness is dependent on your C, which is the maximum clarity. And what do I mean by that? Because normally when you put a L2 or limiter on your mix bus and you crank everything to the top and you hit that zero ceiling and your dynamics started crushing down, what I notice is the quicker you get to that crush on the zero is because of lack of clarity in your mixes. Let me explain that a different way. So for example, if we have a kick, a snare, a hi-hat, a bass, and a lead vocal, those are the Those are the four things that I focus on in every mix to get this to the four C and L, which is the maximum clarity and the maximum loudness. If you don't really carve space for each of these elements in a mix and you hit your limiter bus, you're gonna crap out faster compared to when you have all these four elements perfectly EQ'd and they all fit together like a glove. It will take a longer time before you hit that zero level, and you would have gotten so much loudness out of your mix before you get to that zero level. I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, maybe you guys can ask me a question. And before I move on to the other part, do you have any questions so far on the C and L? Because this two uh part of the framework is they're very important. Any question?
I do got a question. Are you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Hello, Brian.
Hey, what's up?
So, what's the question?
Um, you said those are the, let's say, the drums and the vocal. Call those out, and they're the ones that you focus on pertaining to the maximum loudness.
I think your volume is kind of low. Can you maybe turn your mic up a little bit? All right.
Hear me a little bit better or no?
Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, better. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying you're saying these are the elements that we should use to get that maximum loudness.
Yes. So let me break it down again. On the C, we have to get the main element of the mixes, which is the lead vocal in every song. Lead vocal is the number one priority. Then after that, the kick is the number two priority. Some in some genre, kick is the number one priority, then the vocal. Sometimes in different genre it varies, but I'm assuming in every song, the lead vocal is the main priority. The kick is the next priority. The bass line is the third. The snare drum and the iron, and maybe another element, another melodic, rhythmic melodic element in the song. Those are those are all, they all come in those hierarchy. So what I'm saying is, once you have your main element, those are your anchor. We call those like the anchor of the mix. And you want to get those anchor of the mix to maximum loudness. And this is another thing. So we want to get them to maximum loudness. How do we do that? We make sure those three or four main elements they fit together with our maximum clarity using EQ. And we use EQ, we use sidechain, we use EQ sidechain and any dynamic EQ and compressors to make sure all these four or three to four elements fit together like a glove. And once you do that, then we go to the L. We want to make sure each of these elements hit the zero level. This system is the opposite of what they teach you most of the time on YouTube. They tell you when you're mixing, mix low first. Then when you're done, then you master. This is not what the clapper system is about. The clapper system is the main element of the mix, the anchor element of the mix. We hit them at the 0 dB peak from the beginning, which means your kick is in zero peak level from the beginning. Your bass is hitting zero peak level from the beginning. Your vocal is hitting zero peak level from the beginning. And your snare is in zero peak level from the beginning. So I'm going to show you in my Ableton Live after we talk about the theory so you can see practical what I'm doing. So that is the foundation. So we make sure all this, they hit zero from the beginning. And after that, we make sure that we use EQ to make sure they fit together, because if they don't fit together with EQ properly, then we're going to be hitting our 0 dB in our L2 in the master bus way quicker compared to when we have when we have an element in the mix that fit together properly with EQ. Does that make sense, Bren Amasa?
Yeah, it make a lot of sense, especially when you point out the misconception of what we maybe come across on YouTube.
Yeah.
because definitely that's really the model there, and I'm just gonna point this out too. Working working with you, I think my greatest struggle is just reprogramming my brain.
Yeah.
So it was very good for you to point out that too, because we're coming to you with all these concepts that it's not really what we should have been taught in the first place.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Masa, are you able to chime in on what we just talked about? Hello, Masa, are you there? Since we're not hearing from Masa, let's just move on. So the A is the speaker adaptation, and what the A in the clapper system stands for is to help us rectify the problem that I have and most mix engineers and producer have during the mixes, which is the translation issue. Say most of the time when you do a mix, you finish the mix and you take it to a car or you play it on a phone and you realize that a whole bunch of information are missing it in your mixes. The translation problem is a big problem for me when I was studying mixing, and I online it's a whole bunch of people having the same problem. So how did we solve this with a clapper system? In the clapper system, I'm going to show you a practical example on my Ableton Live how to solve this problem. But to cover the theory part of it, we solved the problem by using parallel processing and harmonic saturation and harmonic distortion. So what we do is for all the main element of our mixes, we do a parallel processing with them and we remove the fundamental frequency of those elements. What do I mean by that? For those who don't understand what I mean by that, every sound they have, every sound have a fundamental frequency, overtone, and the harmonic series. So we have, let's say, if you play a piano, which is a key C, a key C of C2 is 65 hertz. That's the fundamental of the frequency. Then after the fundamental, there's the second, the first order of harmonic, the third order of harmonic, and it goes on like that. So when we trying to create uh we're trying to create harmonic series for our main element to make sure they come out on small speakers because small speakers they can replicate very very low frequency depending on what kind of speakers you have. If you're playing back from a laptop, we know most laptop they crap out from 100 down below or 300 down below, depending on the speakers. Phone speakers, the same thing, but around 100 to 300, they all crap out. So what we want to do is we want to create a parallel processing with distortion, saturation, and we want to remove the lower fundamental of those main element. For example, bass line. This is the first thing that disappears because when you mix bass, when you're mixing your bass, the fundamental they're around 60 to 100 and sometimes 40 all the way to 100 depending what kind of bass you're using. So we created parallel processing and we use harmonic saturation to push the overtone series up in the frequency range. So we're going from 100, 200, 300, 400, creating harmonic series for the bass line. So when it's played on speakers, we can hear them properly. That's how we solve it with the clapper system. And the next part of the clapper system is the punchy groove. And the reason I put this as part of the clapper system is because over the years, I realized that when I'm mixing, by the time I start putting plugins on my sessions, those plugins they introduce very micro milliseconds. And if you're not careful, if you have a groove that's already been locked, and a groove that's already been locked into a timing, and you add in all these plugins, and those plugins they introduce 10 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds. Before you know it, all the groove is shifting out of grid. And that happens over the time. I'm like, okay, that's the reason why I put the P in the clapper system, because I always have to remind myself that after I'm done with the mixing, I have to check all these milliseconds of the shifting of the groove and use my delay compensation in my groove to move the groove back to where they need to be. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Then the E is related to the A, but I still put it in there because besides using harmonic saturation to solve the translation problem on every playback speakers, we want to introduce harmonic distortion all around the mix in the master bus as well. Very minimal master bus to create some type of motion, because that's what the saturation and distortion, they create depth for all our elements. So how do I use this? I put them in different bosses of my mixes. So I have a drum boss. I make sure I put harmonic saturations on there. Bass boss, I put harmonic saturations on there. Vocal box, I put harmonic saturation on there. And now music boss, I put harmonic saturation on there. Just very minimal to have much layers and depth into the mix. And also I put them in the mix box as well. So very important. Last but not the least is the 4D realism. If your mix doesn't have depth, it's it sounds flat and like 2D, because the way we hear, the way we see in the real world is always in depth. We can never hear in a one dimensional or two dimensional in the real life. If you see wherever you are right now, if you close your eyes and focus, you can hear something closer to you. You can hear something coming in the mid ground, something in the background, and something moving from forward and back. And we have to recreate that in our mix to be able to sound very realistic and to imitate the nature. So all these 6 elements, they're what I put together for you guys to be able to understand the clapper system. Any questions so far?
No, no, I don't have any more questions. I just at this point I'm just absorbing everything.
All right. My computer, unfortunately, is crapping out. I think because of the plugins and the mixes, and I'm running Zoom on the same computer, so it's not letting my sound come out. Because I really want to show you this mix that I use the clapper system for. But if I'm not able to play them yet, what I can do is just trying to show you what is going on. So the clapper system, I start from the kick drum, because to me, kick drum is one of the biggest anchor of every mix in this today's genre. So we have the top genre right now: pop, rap, Afrobeat. Those are the ones that are popping in America. I don't know in the other countries what are the top genre over there. And in all those top genre, kick drum is the biggest driving force when it comes to setting the loudness of the mix. So I start with a kick drum. And the way I use the clapper system is because I'm going through I created a clapper wave chain. And this will be available for anyone who wants to buy this. I created a clapper wave chain for each section of the mixes. So this is the one for the clapper drum master, and there's a clapper for the lead vocal section. So this is the clapper lead vocal master. So these are the stuff that I put on the master, and they pretty much do the mixes for me. And all I have to do is just go in there and tweak whatever I need to tweak to kind of get whatever sound I need to get. And this will take care of the loudness. I'm going to show you how to do the loudness. So you're starting with the mastering. So the point of the clapper is we trying to kill the competition. We're not trying to mix everything. They teach you online to gain stage everything. So minus 20, minus 18 dB. But I'm doing that, but at the same time, I'm not doing that. I will show you in a minute. So we want to master everything, especially our four biggest element that's anchoring the mix. We want to master them. We're not mixing alone. We're mixing and mastering at the same time. So by the time we're done, we're hitting the minus six, minus seven loves. Minus six and minus seven loves is very, very loud. And we're doing it in such a way that we're in minus six, minus seven loves with depth and dynamics. Because most of the time you can get to minus six, minus seven loves minus eight, minus six, minus seven. You can get that loud. But most of the time, if you don't have the foundation of the clapper system, you're killing all your dynamics and you're killing the life of your mixes before you even get close to that loudness. But with the way we set it up with the clapper system, you can be dynamic, your transients are intact, and you can hear the depth in the mix without you crapping out at all. So, so this is the cake. So what I do with the cake, first of all, I make sure going into my master bus, the cake is around minus 18. That's the gain staging part of it. But once I hit the master bus, not the master bus, sorry, the master, I guess it's still a master bus. I'm talking about the clapper masters on here. So when the kick hit the clapper master, and the reason I make sure I gain stage it to minus 18 dB, you need to understand why. Is because I'm going into analog emulation plugins, which is this right here, the Fairchild emulation, and I'm going into NLS buses, which is earlier emulations of different consoles, because I'm going through this, and these plugins are designed to perform optimally around minus 18 and minus 20. So that's why I make sure I gain stage my key, my main element to make sure before they get into my master, they're around minus 18. So after they get into my masters, coming out of my master, I make sure they're hitting my goal loves target. And the my targeted level of loves is minus 10 loves. So my kick should be in minus 10 by the time it comes out of my master and it hit my mix bus up here, which I also have some stuff on here. I have a clipper. Actually, the clapper system, you have to clip 200 times before you get to your master bus because we don't want any clip picking up our air drums. So I'm clipping 2 times before I hit my L bus. This is a clip right there. This this is my L2, and you see most of the time the way they teach you to get loudness is to push this up all the way and crush your limiter. You see, I'm not doing any push on my L2. It's just sitting at zero. Everything that's giving me the loudness is coming from the mix. I'm not using L2 as a crutch to get my loudness. So the loudness is baked and cooked into the way I set up the mixing. Does that make sense? Also, I add another clipper before before my L2. There's one clipper going into the L2, then another clipper before the L2. Then the God particles, I'm not using it, and I mix with the God particles. I like it, but I'm not using it here because I have it down to zero. But what I use it for is to check my eye frequency because I like the way uh the algorithm in there tells you when your high frequency is jumping too much. So I know if I'm hitting this too high all the way here, I'm too bright. So I need to reduce maybe my de-esser on my lead vocals or my hi-hat or my snares. Those are going too crazy. So I need to bring them down. That's what this is for. And I'm adding Ozone Exciter, and all this comes from Jason Joshua template. I'm adding Ozone to add more saturation in my master bus. Then another tip, saturation, the master bus. Those are what those are for. So what I'm adding to the clapper system, the drum clapper system, I'm starting with the L2. I mean, sorry, with the puke chai and a series of NLS, then our bass, our compressor. Then I added a sapphire, then a gate, and and a CLA SSL. So so that's what I have on the on the kick. So the same goes, but you see on the kick itself, on the kick channel, only have a saturator, which is really just at zero, there's zero drive. Then I have a bump on the 60 for the kick. And this is my snare drum, which is a clap. This is a volume to kind of gain stage it. And I'm adding 900 because it was too bright. So I have to bring down all this because everything going through my master, it makes it changes the texture of the clap and the snare. So I have to use an EQ to reshape it to what I want it to sound like. Let me move this so you can see. So this is the stuff that I have, and there's some resonance in the clap. So I took them out with this. And this, I'm using this for halo reflection to add to the snare drum. And then this is a beat crusher. I'm beat crushing the snare, the clap to around 13.5K. So any frequency after that, they get shut off. And also using 12 beat to add more crunch to it. So those are the two main drum section, and everything is going through the drum master. So I also added a little bit of scepter. Scepter is like another parallel EQing to add a little bit more distortion. Then, like I told you earlier, I'm clipping in every stage as much as possible. So I'm clipping after the the master, the clapper master. And sometimes I will even add clips in individual element, but I didn't do that for this one. And then the bass section. So the bass section, this volume right here, this is what I use to gain stage the bass going into my master to make sure it's at minus 18. And when it hits my master, this is my bass clapper blaze master. It's very identical to the drums, but is a little different. I start with the puke chime again. Then it goes into a series of NLS. We go into a series of NLS. Then we have R bass, but this R bass, I took the frequency to 40. For the kick, I put it at 80 to create a difference in frequency. Then there's a compressor, and there's Sapphire, and there's Gate, and CLE mix bus. I mean CLE emulation of SSL console. And after that, it goes into, oh, okay, there's nothing, this is muted. Then it goes into a split frequency. And this is how I create the A part of the clapper method. Remember I talk about the creating harmonic series for our speakers. This is how I do that. So I'm adding a guitar amp from the 150 hertz upward. So I'm adding that from 150 hertz upward. Let me see if people on TikTok can see what we're talking about as well. So I'm adding I'm adding amp to the 150 upward, and I'm using PS22 to split the frequency a little bit to create a stereo image. And after that, I'm going into an EQ and taking down a little bit of up to 2500, and that's it. That's all I have for the Clapper 808 master bus. Then this is a clapper. I did another clapper for the vocals for the background. This is the clapper chain for the background vocals. Just a gate to remove some noise. And EQ, I'm taking out a lot of 500 because this has a layers of vocals in it. Then I'm adding some saturation in parallel processing. So I'm adding a mani distortion chain, a little bit of NLX as well. All this has been done in parallel. Then I'm adding, this is Shep's, this is Andrew Shep's chain. What I'm doing here is I'm adding from 300 output, I'm adding saturation up there and a little bit of compression. I'm also doing CLA 76 with the Alvars. So, and last but not least, it's the vocal chain. So what I did with the vocal chain is similar to the background, but it's tailored for vocals, for lead vocals. Alvars again, then you see, I'm not taking out the 500 that I took out for the lead vocals because I want my lead vocal to dominate that area, and that's how you make lead vocals and background vocal fit together in your mix, so they have different frequency to sit on. And this is the parallel processing that I have for the lead vocal. I'm doing Manny distortion again, another series of NLS, and I'm adding an Abbey Road saturator, and the same with the Andrew Sheps. Then another CLA poly compression. Then another Andrew Sheps to create mid range. So let me show you. This is important. So I'm using this to create mid range. You see, the iPads is 600 and 3000, and this is creating a mid range for the lead vocal to make it stand out in the mix. And after that, we're going into a C6 to take any resonant frequency. It's bugging me. Then we have a true verb, which is adding some L reflections. It's not a reverb, but just L reflection to kind of make it sound realistic. Then this is RDS here to take out some harsh 2K in the mix. Then a multi-band compression to massage everything together to give us a solid lead vocal. Then we go into L2, just like for safety. And this is what I use this L2 for. If my vocals is not getting me to my targeted loudness, which is my loves target, I told you earlier for clapper system, the loves target is -10. If I'm not hitting -10, this is how I do it. I just push this down to get me to -10. But everything I've done before this stage should have got me into that stage. But if I didn't get there, I can use my master to push it up a bit. So, but for this case, we didn't need it, so I left it at -1. Then it's another track here. This is really not a clapper system thing, but just a mix preference. I added a vocal blender to kind of create some interesting vocal thing for me. Just minimal because I'm not really doing, I don't think I did anything. Yeah, only 3 cents and -2 cents. That's all I did. And the siblings is to just take care of any siblings that's poking through. And this right here is to set the levels. So there's another thing that you have to understand. Even though my goal is to get all my main elements to -10 lobs, because once I hit the -10 lob, then I now balance the mix because everything is already mastered to 0 the way I want it, and -10 lobs targeted loudness. After I get there, then I can balance the mix and say, okay, kick is dominating, bass, then lead vocal come down a bit to kind of fit the way I want it to fit. And this is what I do this for. So then there is overall vocal bars, which I'm just taking out some 100 Hz to let the bass and the kick dominate that area more. Then I'm adding another saturation right here. Then another limiter just to catch any picks to protect my L2. And just volume change right there. The music bus